Welcome to the Love Disciple podcast. Today we are conducting an interview that has been a little bit of a fantasy of mine. We'll be interviewing Serena Hicks. Serena is a seriously spiritual business and money coach. So, what does that mean? I will definitely kick back and let Serena explain, but just know that in keeping with the podcast name, she's here to talk about all things business and love, and she believes that business is an act of love, a spiritual practice, and a sacred offering. Serena has leveraged this knowledge to create a multi-million-dollar business and now coaches in the Boom Boom Room, which is her signature group coaching program. Interviewing Serena, as I alluded to, has been a dream come true, and she's been a quietly inspiring mentor of mine for years. So join Serena and I as we dive into all things money and magic.
Dynamite, I'm blowing up my mind. I wanna be free, I wanna be cool, I wanna be bad. Welcome. This is a very lucky, exciting moment for me to be able to sit down with you. I know that I've known about you for so long. I'm like a little bit stumbling over my words. I'm kind of excited, but when I first heard about you, I believe I was really obsessed with Stacey Bayman and I joined 2K. I'm not a life coach, but I was like loving everything about it. I found you somehow, some way, and you told me that your coaching to work with you was $10,000 and my mind was blown. And I've stuck around with you ever since. You're a life coach. You teach people how to have an open-hearted relationship with money. Everybody, this is Serena Hicks. I'm very excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm also excited, so much of what I talk about, you know this, because I know that we've been connected on the interwebs for a while, is, money is not just about money. And in the open-hearted relationship with money, there's such generosity and sharing, and not sharing from a lack of worthiness, but just, there's more than enough, not functioning from a scarcity where like, if you have some, I don't have enough. So I just want to say a new term that I heard, I did not make it up, but I'm loving and hearing around. And I'm like, oh, I think of myself at this point as a financial empowerment coach because I am so not, for some of your listeners, I'm not here for budgeting. I'm here to focus on the relationship that we have with money. Show me how you are with money, and I can tell you how you are everywhere else in your life. And I like to think I'm compassionate and open-hearted and have no judgment because I was such a proper shit show, not just with money, but with everything in my whole life for the first 40 years. So for any listeners, I just want to make clear, I do not have the same accolades as some of my dear friends, but some of my dear friends who were like literally unhoused and, using drugs are some of my favorite people because they have no judgment. They're like, oh no, I've done everything. I've done everything so-called bad before. And I'm like, this is why you are magnificent. They are not confused. They don't believe our worthiness and our lovability comes from playing by all of society's so-called standards. It's like an inside job. So thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Heck yeah. That is being unhoused is such a flex.
Yep.
I did it intentionally when I first came to Austin, and then again in 2020, my partner thought that I was absolutely insane. I was sleeping out by the river. My dad thought I was insane, but I had a breaking point. I was working a corporate job and I was making the most money I've ever made at that point in time, which was 60K. I was like, oh my God, 5,000 a month. This is everything to me. But I was so miserable and highly medicated. I snapped. I said, I would rather be homeless than live another day like this. So I was so terrified of being homeless. That was like the ultimate failure and fear. And so I was just like, I'm going to dive right into what that is in 2020. And yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was completely freeing. Like you said, there's a lot of made up rules. And when you are homeless, especially if you do it intentionally, you realize really how much of everything we do is made up and how freeing it is to not be surrounded by four walls all the time.
It's so interesting because all of our ancestors weren't surrounded by four walls. And
Yeah.
I enjoy, especially living in Texas, central AC and heat, like I'm here for it.
Mhm.
But as a society, we have made such false idols out of things like home ownership and being housed and what kind of car do you drive and what is your retirement plan? And these are not worthy of our time and attention. I
Mhm.
desire this for everyone. But
Mhm.
what's interesting is just like anything, if we attach our sense of well-being or our worthiness, and most people do it unconsciously,
Mhm.
to these things, we are literally just beholden to them. And in particular, I know that you know this, but for your listeners, hey, everybody. So I'm a Black biracial woman. My dad is Black, my mom is white. I'm a direct descendant of enslaved people right here in Texas. And it's interesting coming from like a direct bloodline of enslaved people. I see so often how many people are enslaved to their
Mhm.
job or to their mortgage or to different circumstances. And that certainly transcends race. And it's like, I desire freedom. I desire to honor all of my ancestors. And it's like, starts with some freedom and love houses, love vacations, love abundance, want everyone to have all of it. But I think it starts from a healthy sense of detachment from those things and attachment to the divine and our inherent worthiness. It's like
There's
your choice to be unhoused was, it sounds like a little bit defiant and also very clearly like I will not be beholden to my socialization, that this is what makes me quote successful. It's like I can do this if it's especially when it's a choice. So jumping all over, but I bought a Tesla Model 3 a few years ago. Love it. Love it. When my ex and I split up, he had a Model 3. And when we actually moved in together, I sold my car because I was at the beginning of my business, didn't have any money. And we moved in and we were downtown Austin and you have to pay for a parking space. And I want to shout him out that he was just like, hey, if you want to sell your car, my car is your car until you decide to buy another car. So that's what we did. Also, I was a coach working from the internet. So didn't need a car that often. All of it to say, then of course, Corona happened. When we split up, man, I love me a Tesla. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy what he had, just the newer version and the better version. LOL. Anyways, interesting thing. There's a Facebook group called Tesla Divas. It's exclusively for those who identify as female. All who identify as female are welcome. It's the most supportive group. And somebody somehow started a conversation. I didn't realize there's basically a trend where people are buying Teslas, and you can definitely get a great used one for 15, 20K at this point, and they're living in them. And it's a very conscious financial decision for some of these people, as in, instead of buying a trailer home or dealing with rent, Teslas have the camping option. I forget what the setting is because I don't use it, but like it is a very conscious, intentional decision for the safety features and the being able to regulate their temperature overnight in the vehicle that they're buying and living in used Teslas. And I thought this is a very interesting, never occurred to me. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many amazing things, and there's going to be more and more, I feel like, popping up as we progress into this new era. And everything that you said, I feel like there's so many different places to go with it. I have a couple of notes of things that I want to touch on. I feel like very eager right now. But the main thing that I wanted to highlight is, this is the Love Disciple podcast. It's about being a disciple, a student of love, and really thinking about how a deeper understanding of love can like when you really become a student of that, walking hand in hand with that, not studying it from an intellectual perspective, how it can impact different areas of your life. And you are a financial empowerment human.
Mhm.
And so I followed you for so long, so there's so much that I could talk about. I want to talk about the soul of money, which
Mhm.
I believe you recommended, and just kind of in that area of what money is.
Mhm.
Can you speak to what money is, your understanding of what money is?
So my understanding is that money is a living energy. And so an example that I'd want everyone to think of is like love to me is a living energy. So if we all think of someone we love, think of a niece, a nephew, a lover, a parent, a sibling, a neighbor, like someone you love. And if you focus on that and think of the last fun conversation or the last hug or the last time you saw them, I feel that love expand in my body, in my energy system.
Mm.
And I know we have now added more love to the planet. The fact that I'm thinking of, I was mentioning to you before we started recording, my dad had a surgery last Friday morning, and the short of it is there were major complications, and he's at home now recovering, which is great. But like, he tried to die on me, and I am unprepared for that. And when I think of the love and the gratitude that like he is alive and we never know anything, but probably will be for a significant amount of time moving forward, there's just this love and gratitude. And I know that I am currently a more loving person on the planet today. I didn't take love away from the planet. It's not a pie where I have a larger slice of pie today and now there's less love available for others on the planet. It's more creates more for all. That's an energy. Creativity, same. When an artist writes a new song, yay, we have a new song on the planet. It is circulating new energy. It doesn't mean another song had to die. It doesn't mean someone else was like, I just can't come up with a new chef recipe today. Creativity is down because someone else must have taken more than their share. Unlimited living energy. And I say the living part, I can't prove it in case anyone's like, can you prove it? I cannot. But here's what I offer. Living in that we all of us that are alive, all of you humans listening to me, we know that we have reactions. So imagine if you walk into a room and a handful of people are like, oh my God, it's you. I'm so happy you're here. How have you been? Did you sleep well? What's going on? And there's this just greeting. We lean into that kind of energy, like, oh, I feel special. I feel love. This is what's happening. I like it. Versus if we were to walk into a room and someone's like, oh, where have you been? You were late. Did you bring anything? That's all you brought? You only brought you? I needed more from you and you're late. Like that sort of diminishing, demanding, demeaning energy. I'm not trying to hang out there unless you are actively hating yourself and not well. If someone is constantly demeaning and putting you down and it's never enough and you're always late, you don't want to hang out there. And so I like that living because so often accidentally people do that with their money. It's never enough. It's too late. There should be more. And I have done this too, just so everybody's very clear. So no judgment, but it's like, yeah, money's not going to come hang out when you're a dick all the time. And yet when we are genuinely like, hey, thank you for being here. And there's a level of trust, something I see with my clients all the time that I just love because I think it's hilarious. And I've absolutely done it more than once in this lifetime. But this like outright distrust that it's going to leave. And one day we were like belly laughing because a married woman who's very happily married has been very late, my God, for decades now. She's like, I don't ask my husband if he's going to leave me all day, every day. I genuinely just think we're okay. And sometimes things are strained, but like, she's like, yet I'm finding with my money, I'm constantly like, it's going to run out. It's going to leave. It's not going to be here tomorrow. And she's like, I don't do that to my husband. I just trust we're in a relationship and he's got me and I understand things could go sideways. But she was able to really identify such the different energy. This constantly, are you going to leave? Are you sure? Are you going to come back? Are you sure? Needy energy. And it's like, oh. And the beauty, of course, was she was like, if I acted like that with my husband, he might end up leaving. If I asked him 20 times a day, are you coming back? Are you leaving? I need you to be here. At some point he might be like, you guys, it's a simplified example, but it would have an effect. At some point he would be annoyed that she didn't just trust the relationship. And so I think of money as a living energy because I feel like when we are demanding, are you going to be here? I need more from you. I need more from you. This isn't enough. You should have been here earlier. We're fighting with reality and we're being a dick to money. And then oftentimes we're like, why isn't it here? Well, shit, humans who would hang out when you act like that? No. And people I think get in trouble because they're like, okay, I'll be nice to money, but it's not sincere. And I love when you talk about being a love disciple, it's the same thing in any relationship. Not being sincere and pretending to be kind is just manipulation. It's just like, think of how often people are like, I was nice to that cashier and they didn't give me a free thing. So you were just trying to manipulate them. It's okay. Like, I won't judge you, but like, let's call it what it is. So the key is finding and tapping into and melting into actual love and appreciation so that it is sincere and authentic. Because when we're trying to just spackle, okay, this is great. I know it's great. Then it's like we're lying to ourselves in the world, and that's never helpful.
Right. When you were talking, I was kind of feeling a little element of safety being important. So I think that, everybody has this fear of like, I'm going to be homeless, which obviously is like the pinnacle of all the fears. Every fear is like on a ladder up to that. So I mean, how do you deal with safety, or how can someone create safety? What
It
is
is
that?
such a good question. So thank you, because people think when they have a certain amount of money, then they will feel safe. And the safety has to be created from the inside, and then they will have more and more money. I'm
Mm,
going to give you examples of people that, oh shit, I'm making $1 million level and they fall apart. And it's like we have to create the safety from inside. I think it's fascinating. I don't know the percentage. Maybe someday we can get Chat GPT to find it for us. I think it's fascinating how many entrepreneurs, especially ones who go big, come from, quote, not a lot of money,
mm,
and or have had seasons of being unhoused, and not necessarily on purpose. And what I think the correlation is a willingness to find safety inside,
mm,
not anchored to the number in the checking account or the number of profitability. People who need to see certain numbers to feel safe totally understand, and aren't equipped to grow multi-million-dollar businesses because they can only be a certain level of relaxed. And remember, the more we're relaxed, the more we're connected to the divine, to actual inspiration, to like, oops, recognizing opportunities as they come up, as opposed to when we're in panic and we just can't. So finding the emotional safety, I think I talk about it a lot, about recognizing our inherent worthiness and lovability, because most of us feel unsafe because we don't want to be a burden. What we're really terrified of is like, what if I lived with my parents or my sister or my partner had to support me financially? And I think I translate that into, I don't want to be a burden.
mm,
I don't want other people to be inconvenienced. I want to pull my own weight. And I acknowledge I sure as shit, and most of your listeners, I'm sure as well, came from very well-meaning parents who socialize us to be good citizens of the world, which meant contribute.
mhm,
Don't just be someone who's like, I don't know, everybody pays for everything, it's totally fine. The problem is most of us, in particular those who are people of color, in particular those who are socialized as females, accidentally, we think we need to earn our seat at the table. We need to earn our place. And by earn, I mean literally we need to be contributing financially always, and or paying for this. And it's subtle, it's accidental. It's why I love this work. And so it's like, yeah, there's a lot of gray area between being the asshole who's like, everyone just pays for everything and I could care less, versus what most of us do, which is constantly trying to earn love, approval, appreciation, worthiness. I need to earn it. And so finding the safety in the middle for me, and it is a practice. I want to say this again and again. And
mm,
everyone I look forward to and admire, I'm like, it's a practice. Meaning, just like yoga, it may be a little cumbersome at first, but hang out with the yogi who's been doing it daily for 15 years. They're still practicing. They're just so much better at it. But like,
mhm,
it's still just a practice. They're not like, oh, I arrived, I'll never do yoga again, it's fine. Like, no, it's like if people are into daily prayer, daily meditation, it's a practice. It works when you work it. You stop working it, it doesn't really work anymore. No judgment either way. Just let's be clear on it. So the practice is finding safety and recognizing no matter what, I'm okay. And so for me as an entrepreneur, I used to make jokes all the time about, oh God, what if I had to live with my parents? Now I'm like, what a privilege if I had to, quote, live with my parents because I ruined everything, quote, financially. What a privilege that I have parents. I have two sets. I have a mom and stepdad, and I have a dad. And
mm,
though these are not joyful ideas, because I don't actually delight in the idea, if I had to live there, it's no longer a God forbid, wouldn't that be awful bullshit story. It's more
mm,
of a, if everything fell apart and I ended up there, what a privilege that I have that option. What a privilege that I even have a third option in my little brother and sister-in-law. And they have two kids, and they probably wouldn't be like, oh, joy of our life, come live with us. And yet, I'm confident they'd be like, if you need to be here for a few months, absolutely. What a privilege. And so I think you can feel there's a different energy when and you know this. Okay, y'all, I'm not an athlete, so I enjoy athletic analogies that make no sense. But here's the deal. Every athlete knows if you're playing to win, it's a really different game than when you're playing not to lose.
mm,
When you're playing not to lose, you're trying to protect slash hold on to something. It's
mhm,
defending. And that's an entirely opposite energy of playing to win, which is inspired, it's creative, it's in the moment, it's let's do this thing, that you're anchored to winning and let's see what happens, versus playing not to lose, you're anchored to don't lose. And so it's the same thing with money. When people are like, okay, but I can never have less than 10K in my, emergency fund, or I can never have less than this in my fort, that's playing not to lose.
Mm,
The energy is anchored to don't run out of money. So
right.
that energetic component is don't run out of money. And what the universe hears is run out of money. And we want instead to be anchored to there's always more money coming in. My priority is bringing more money coming in. I live in an abundant universe. I have agency. I have co-creative powers. That's an entirely different energy to be anchored to. It's like the difference I'm going to exploit. I know you're a musician. If a songwriter tried to write songs from I can't run out of ideas point of view, instead of writing a song from let's see what comes up. There's always ideas. They may not be good, but there's always ideas. As opposed to, I don't want a creative block. It's like, oh God, now you're literally manifesting a creative block. So I hope that makes some sense on safety. The other thing that I want to say as far as safety is it has to be created inside. So I made a lot of money really quickly. For your listeners, the short is I think I'd crossed the $1 million mark in just under 3 years. And that's not in 1 year, but that's cash collected. And that's insane. I'd never made more than 100,000 in a calendar year. That's insanity. And so it happened very quickly. And that led to imposter syndrome for me. And what if I'm just lucky? I'm not just lucky. I'm courageous. And also all of us have the opportunity to tap into luck. All of it to say, I witnessed firsthand and up close a handful of people who self-sabotaged after they made even more money than me.
Mm,
And so much of it as a money mindset mentor / financial empowerment / money coach that I can see from my point of view was that they didn't feel safe. Like once they'd made a few 100,000, they wanted to hold that in those checking accounts and hold that in the cash reserve. And we're here to play the game of accumulation. Yes, we're here to accumulate, but they couldn't find safety in spending. Here, let me say it like this: making $15,000 mistakes.
mm,
They couldn't find safety in investing 10,000, 20,000, or 50,000 in Facebook ads. And, if you're making $50,000 a year, definitely don't do that. But if you're at the 800K level scaling a business, there will be different investments. And I have made more $15,000 mistakes than I'm interested in detailing at this exact moment. But I was thinking about it once and I was like, oh, that's the difference between us. I'm not yet where I desire to be. And at the same time, I recognize as I build my make more than $1 million in a calendar year business,
mhm.
mistakes will be made, including some of the $15,000 mistakes I made. And so many women and people of color are so obsessed with the idea of not making a financial mistake. It's the false idol of if I never do anything. I admit that their success is standing on a pile of failures.
I think I lost you for a moment in the recording, but I
Mhm.
totally hear what you were saying. It just froze a little bit, but what you were saying, it reminded me of something that you told us. Two things you remind me of. First of all, you told us, whether it was on one of your coaching calls or somewhere, I've introduced it to our family and we totally use it about paying off debt. You've talked so many times about your debt story, your bankruptcy, and what that was like. And the thing that you said that really impacted us is like you could play the game, the losing game of paying down debt, or you could play the winning game of making money. You could save money and play that game, or you could play a completely different game.
I'm so happy you brought that up. So at this point, I now recognize there's more than one way to peel a banana.
Hmm.
So for some people and where they are at in their nervous system, they want to save up and get out of debt before they focus on making money. It doesn't
Mm,
make sense to me. I don't recommend it. But I also just want to honor everyone has different situations. For those who are like, no, I'm here to do big things and I want to make money and I want to create generational wealth, then I'm like, no. Focus, prioritize making money so that you can pay off all the debt.
mhm.
It's not let's carry debt forever, but it's like I'm amazed sometimes people will say something like, well, if I do XYZ, it might take me 2 years to pay off this credit card. That might be $900 in wasted interest. And I'm
Mm,
like, you're focusing on $900 and I'm asking you to focus on 100K years. Those are really different priorities. And for some people, I'm now very clear, like it has to be an internal personal choice. So, if they're like, nope, there's a phrase, and I remember when I heard it, it like stopped me in my tracks. So I'm gonna say it right here. Stop stepping over crumpled dollar bills in order to pick up a shiny penny.
Mm.
And I just saw a visual and I was like, I have seen so many people do this, and I used to do that. I don't anymore. But like, there's a crumple $100 bill and it's like, ooh, shiny penny. I want a penny. And it's like, cool. For some people, if that's their choice, I honor their choice at this point. But for those of you who are like, no, I'm here for more, I'm like, yeah, no, I want to find the crumpled $100 bill. I'll pick up the penny too. But also, like, the penny is not the priority just because it's shiny and pretty. And our society has obsessed and glorified debt free. And I want everyone to be debt free, but I want them to be debt free from an empowered place of I know how to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Not from a let me get out of debt and then I'll figure out how to make money. Like, I mean, if you want, but I don't get it.
It was such
But
a
I respect that I don't get a lot. Thank you.
Fair, very fair. It was such a great way of putting it. It totally shifted things for our family. And the other thing that you kind of brought to mind with what you're saying is just the level of the game that you're playing. I see so many of people, people who I love very dearly and who I care about, stressing over $50, $500. And I know what that feels like because I am still there in my day-to-day life where that is my reality. And at the same time, it's not my reality all the time. I kind of have this weird blessing where sometimes the $50 is really precious and meaningful and important. And other times I'm playing a completely different game of $5,000 or maybe $10,000. And I want people, including myself, to know that there is a completely different game that's being played. And it's almost like their whole world is constrained a little bit. How do you interact with that? How do you help people
I think
shift?
it's important to recognize. For me, I started to break free from that when I recognized like that was the patriarchy's plan for me. The
Mm,
patriarchy always wanted me within $400 of being absolutely overdrawn in my account. And I was for years, for years, for years. So again, there's no shame, there's no judgment. Like the system is rigged. I remember at one point recognizing like I would check my debit card every single day and I like treated myself to Starbucks one day, but then magically Bank of America, shout out, was like holding or else did an early draw on an automatic payment or whatever, even though I checked my account and was like, cool, I have $80. I can afford to get myself this latte today. And then like the next day, three things would hit and I'd have three overdraft fees of $35 each. So I went through a whole season where I spent hundreds of dollars on a regular basis on overdraft fees. So it's when you're in that space, it's so hard to get out. So recognizing that, but for me, that gave me fuel to get out because I was like, this is the white supremacist patriarchy wanting me to stay broke and broken, thinking poorly of myself, thinking I don't deserve, because we just see this glamorization of like money and worthy people and smart people. Trust me, you do not have to be smart to have money. We all know that. And like I know it for sure now. And and worthiness, it's like there are plenty of good people who are filthy rich. There are plenty of bad people who are filthy rich.
mhm.
Same thing with broke and or poverty. Plenty of good people who are broke and or in poverty. Plenty of up to no fucking good people who are broke and in poverty. Like there's no, oh, in this tax bracket, you're superior or righteous. And so for me, part of breaking free was recognizing it is so hard to break free because the other part, and especially after my bankruptcy, I was like, cash only, I'll never use credit. I was so demonizing credit, but I thought it was from a superior place because I was like, I screwed things up before, I'll never do it again, cash only. And then when it was time to buy a car, I like couldn't get a good deal because I had no credit.
Mm,
And the credit worthiness, bleh, I know, I hate that word, worthiness. It has nothing to do with your worthiness as a human, but it's called credit worthiness. And so it was like, oh, so I had this higher percentage rate just to get a car because I hadn't been playing the credit game. And then fast forward to a season when I've got all these, I can't even say checks bouncing, it's debits and hundreds of dollars on a regular basis. And then when became time, it worked out for an apartment rental. But if you're qualifying for an apartment, your credit score matters. And if you're ever getting a loan, your credit score, like you have to pay more interest and get higher interest. It is a system. And so part of what helped me get out of it was recognizing the kind of people who I am not here to support, like the white supremacist patriarchy systems set it up so that many people would spend their time obsessing over breaking even instead of breaking free from that matrix. And for me, that was about when I was like, I want to break free from the matrix because I can't help poor people when I'm poor. And the systems in place do nothing for me and my people. And I mean, all my different types of people. So I want to create new systems, and I'm a huge fan of, I hate it when people like to criticize all the systems. I mean, I criticize things too, but like, if you need them to make changes in order to be free, you are not free. Like we have to, liberation is an inside job. And when I think of people who did insane things, like let's think of Harriet Tubman, nobody told her she was allowed to do that, literally. And for any listener who doesn't know who she is, get on Google and then watch the movie and then circle back. But she ran away as a slave, and then she ran the Underground Railroad and freed all of these other enslaved people. And one of the things I like about the movie portrayal is when she was in a position to go back and free other enslaved humans, they were like, you are a tiny Black woman. Like, we need to train you and do all these different things. And then maybe we'll let you do, we'll let you. And she was like, bye, I'm doing it. Like, she already had a plan. Wow, is my point. Everyone who has broken glass ceilings, norms, color barriers, gender barriers, did so without permission. And we have been socialized to ask for permission. We've been socialized to get a gold star. It's why I think we get confused and we're like, I got to get debt free or I got to break even. And I'm like, get out of that matrix. It is what was planned for you. And for that reason, I reject. I reject it for myself. I reject it for others. I want to honor everyone's on their own path. And this is not a reason to beat yourself up or self-attack, being like, wait, I'm not doing it right. Like, that is not the intention of any part of this conversation. It is about loving ourselves where we are. But that was a form of love I gave a form and it took me a very long time to get here, but to be like, hey, I want new systems and I want to be a part of the new systems because these ones don't impress me.
Absolutely. I can get behind that. I want to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about your boom boom room.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Hey everyone, I want to take a moment to introduce you to Serena Hicks's Boom Boom Room. It's something that, if we haven't mentioned it already, we're definitely going to be talking about a little bit more later. And right now, it's a little bit hard to describe, but it's essentially a community where you can actually go through a personal transformation in community, in support, with your relationship to money and to finances and to the energy of love and connection. So the program is something that is accessible through her website. I highly recommend checking it out. I can't really explain the magic that she creates. I think that she's really the best one to talk about that, and I'm going to let her do that throughout the rest of this podcast. But I would be remiss if I did not direct you to her website and tell you where you can sign up. First of all, go to serenahicks.com and read her about page. Her resume is stacked, as you can see here. Second of all, you're going to go to serenahicks.com/boom. You're going to read the reviews and all the people who have gotten so much success from the program, and you're going to click count me in. Let's go to get started.
All right, we are back, and I have to ask you about the boom boom room. So everything that you've been talking about, you're clearly so well versed on these concepts. You have a million and one examples. There is a space where you dive deep into all of these things. Yes?
Yes. So I call it the Boom Boom Room because it's my signature 6-month program, and it's where your current concept, your current map of reality between you and money goes boom. We just blow it up. Sometimes I think I'm going to change the name to the Bloom Room because everyone's like, I just bloom in here. Like, well, I was feeling feisty when I named it. Sometimes people ask me like, what's it named after? And I lived in New York City when the Boom Boom Room was like this popular bar club dance space. And I literally never went. I just had so much fun reading about it in page 6. And when I was naming this space, I was like, I'm going to call it the Boom Boom Room because it's where you and your current reality of money goes boom, like we explode it. Everyone listening, go to serenahicks.com for more information, or find me. Mostly I'm on Instagram, also on Facebook, but XOXO Serena Hicks. What is valuable, I think, or most valuable about the Boom Boom Room is there's information, and that is different from transformation. Information alone does not create a transformation. If it did, every time any of us read a book, I had read so many money mindset books before my transformation took place. So information is absolutely necessary. We love it. But information does not magically equal a transformation. Our nervous system is an imperative. It is key, you guys, to remember you have a nervous system. And what I mean by that is we are wired to fit in. Humans are pack animals. We are not wired to stand out. Standing out, sometimes people call it the witch wound. Standing out is how, women were burned at the stake in Salem, Massachusetts. Standing out is how people are called or made fun of, publicly humiliated, told like, nobody knows, you don't know what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And so in particular for women and people of color, like it's even hard on white men to stand out with an innovative idea. But if you've been socialized as female or a person of color, know that it is all of our imperative to fit in, and it feels scary in our nervous system, vulnerable. Will I be ostracized? Will I be cast out? And when I keep saying DNA level, we have a DNA imperative to fit in. All of our ancestors, we are all direct descendants of ancestors, ultimately that originated in tribes. And to be cast out meant you were either going to die from the elements, or another animal or another tribe was going to find and eat you. So it's not just like in our head. It was like to be cast out literally meant you're going to die. So there is a DNA component to, oh shit, I don't want to feel shame, which usually sounds like in our head, I don't want to get it wrong. And or there's a reason so many people rise to stardom in the arts or in a business and then self-sabotage. It's like they don't actually have the capacity to receive that much love and appreciation. And we have to cultivate the capacity to be seen and loved and also attacked. That happens as you're a public figure. And it always comes back to the safety inside of ourselves. But like we have to grow that capacity. And that's where I think the Boom Boom Room is magic. It's all sorts of money mindset. It's totally subversive. It's totally spiritual. We are, as you know, anchored in love. And it's in a community. And some of the feedback that lights me up again and again is people being like, I don't have anywhere else I get to talk about this. And we have full spectrum from people who are like, hi, I make 7 figures, to people who are like, I don't know how I'm going to pay the mortgage next month. My point being, it's full spectrum. It's not like everybody here is making at least 300K. We have a full spectrum and everybody supports everybody. And I am not surprised because I built it that way and very proud. So it's a female forward group. We have non-binary humans. We have men who love and appreciate, ladies and non-binary humans. We have all races. We are literally a global community. Anyone, if you're interested, join immediately. It's the kind of thing that you can always put off. And yet I'm like, I think it's like heart health. You can always put off your cardiovascular health, but do you really want to? Do you really want to? Please don't. That's the Boom Boom Room.
Very, very, you sold me.
Good.
I love
Come on
it.
in. There's payment plans available, people. I should also mention that. If you go to the checkout page, you'll find payment options.
My goodness. Wow. I love that there's all different types of people in the Boom Boom Room. One of the things that you talked about in a previous podcast was about neurodivergency and making money. And when I was listening to that podcast, that live, I was just struck by your clarity on consistency and how consistency is like kind of used as a tool. I use consistency against myself. I tell myself if I'm not consistent with XYZ thing,
So I don't deserve. We weaponize. I love that you said tool. I'm like, no, sis, it's a weapon. So I'm ADHD. I have absolutely been treated for depression and anxiety before. And by treated, I just want to like let everyone know. And why I want to make sure you guys know is I like where I'm at in my life and business. And I want everyone to know this is available to you too. I am obsessed with my family. I come complete with a hot mess of a childhood. I've been treated for complex PTSD. I had my first medical treatment for depression 8 million years ago in 1996. I'm still grateful that my mother chose to take me to a therapist and recognize, because her family of origin, like, you don't go to a therapist. Hard stop, the end. Like, she was a quote bad daughter and a very good mother to take me to get treatment. And for all my young friends, I see my young friend saying, listen, in the 1996, like they just had the new drugs. I'm just saying it was a big deal. Now we all talk about mental health. That was not a thing then. It was a big deal for her to prioritize my mental health. So I have been treated with medication for depression. I was diagnosed as ADHD in January, February 2011. And everybody, I just want to apologize in advance. I didn't have a job at the time. I was busy being depressed, all the usual. But I found a book in the library and it was about how many CEOs have ADD and ADHD. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it because people always ask. I'm sorry. Welcome to my ADHD. I read the book and then I gave it back to the library. But what was fascinating is it was like, I mean, can you be a CEO? So there's two types of CEOs. There's probably more than two, but there's two. Those of us that build the business, or if you're the artist, there's the person who builds the brand. And then there's a CEO who comes in and maintains and like runs shit. Those who innovate and build the brand, i.e. me, we have ADHD. That's who we are. We juggle all the tasks. We're bananas. We go through, and actually the book said, and I was like, that's true too. Many of us, I don't know how to say it other than to say, number one, always consult your mental health professionals, everybody. I am not a mental health professional, but what I recognized in the book was it said many have, I forget what they call it, but it's like a baby version of bipolar where it's like they will go through seasons of just joyful or not joyful, but obsessed with something. And then like a slowdown. And I was like, yep, that tracks. Like when I'm super into something, I'm obsessed. There's no other word for it. And then later I'm like, I don't care anymore. So that is, I want everyone to know I have a very neurodivergent brain. I tried medication, quite frankly, I didn't love it. So I am an unmedicated ADHD. I'm not above medication. If I ever need it for depression again, I'm going right back on it. Like, I'm just like, let's use all of our tools. But in particular, as I was growing my coaching business, I still love, by the way, Stacey Bayman, and she speaks a lot about consistency. She's evolving, so who knows if she's still talking about it, but she certainly did back then. And all the coaches I followed at the time, it's like, you've got to show up consistently with a weekly email and consistent podcasts. And y'all, consistency is a concept that comes straight from the white supremacist patriarchy. And it's supposed to be about like worthiness. If you send, and that's not her intention, just so we're clear. And that wasn't anyone else. Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to make clear for all listeners that that was not her. She was not doing that on purpose. But I am like, what is consistent? Who defines consistent? Can we take it back to old school and seasons? Like, what is this? And y'all, my original career was in television. We always talk about evergreen. And evergreen and consistency, I loathe them both because the concept is always available. And I'm like, no, we have lunar cycles. At this time, I still have a woman's cycle, like cycles, seasons. I am here for look, I'm obsessed, followed by I'm tired, I'll get back to you later. That is my choice. And when I first came up, I felt bad and wrong. And again, not directly by any coach, but like the culture at the time. And I think of how many of my peers would like coach me well-meaning and lovingly, but on like how to be consistent. And being a love disciple, what we have in common all day is the more I chose to love myself, this is how I am. I have not sent, I just want everyone to hear me. Hear me now. My business started in 2019. We are recording this in 2024. Not once have I sent a scheduled, consistent weekly email. So we are coming up on 5 years of, I send emails when I feel like it to my email list. I'm putting systems in place so that more automations happen. But just so we're clear, I've made a multi-million-dollar business, never once, quote, consistently podcasting or consistently emailing. So anyone, do you get your shit out? Don't hide for months and months at a time. But like
That part.
Just know thyself and prosper.
That part, yeah. Know thyself and prosper. Oh, what a great hermetic principle. I freaking love not being consistent and still making millions of dollars, because to me that was like, oh my God, I've been using this against myself.
Many people, and I did too. I'm like, where would I be if it did take me 2 years to untangle that? And again, I made it a weapon. Like nobody told me, if you don't, you don't deserve it. It was just, that was the culture and that's what it looked like. And yeah, I think I I think all systems, there's a point of view, there's a space, there's a proper place for everything. So like when I think of consistency, like, listen, I like to fly, I like to go see people and places and things. I'm so overwhelmingly confused and delighted by the systems that allow for global travel. It's phenomenal when you think about it. So I'm like, I'm really happy that trains and planes are into systems and consistency. Not necessary for artists, for innovators. And as a reminder, it's not that I've never emailed my people. It's not that I was never in touch. I just remember thinking like, you know, I've always bought or connected or done the thing when it just feels like a yes. And I don't think that's reliant on, the email arrives at noon every Tuesday.
Yes, 100%. I think, as we wrap up, this reminds me of one really important thing that you mentioned earlier, actually, about teams and playing a winning game. And I want to connect on this before we wrap up. It's about when you're playing a winning game and you first sit down, it kind of reminds me of Harry Potter for some reason. I don't know why, but any great storytelling, like the hero's journey, it starts off and absolutely everything is against you. If you ask any rational, logical person, or even just the logical part of your mind, there's no freaking way you are going to win. You are a 11-year-old boy going up against the Dark Lord, you and all of his cronies, and it's the same thing for playing a winning game with money. If you're someone who, like I'm thinking of me a couple of months ago, was making $500 a month, it's like, okay, how am I going to play a winning game when my logical brain is telling me that I can't pay my bills? And I just wanted to circle back because there's a word that you mentioned, luck. You can make your own luck. Can you speak a little bit to that scenario?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I want to say for you and everyone listening is this is the perfect place to be starting from. When the brain is like, how are we going to do this when we only have that? Just tell the brain, like, this is the perfect place to be starting from. Because that allows us to anchor into the present. And to anchor in, the reason I love the idea of luck, and I do believe we make our own luck. And what I mean, if I were to use the word luck, I would also use the word inspiration. So everything is a frequency and we're all vibrating at these different frequencies. And when we're closed and in fear, we're vibrating at a different frequency than when we're open and closer to love. And here's an easy example. Anyone ever been in love and or in lust, pick one, but like the first 72 hours where you're just blooming and everything is magical. It's like you go get a coffee and somehow the barista's like, on me. And you're like, okay. And you park at the front of buildings and small 2-year-olds are waving at you and adults are like, great outfit. And what is this alternate reality? Why is everything glorious? And the answer is because we are tapped into love, because we are open and glorious and the world is just mirroring it back. Okay. So luck. I think that luck is what happens when we stop using our human brain and are surrendered or humbled to the point of surrender. That's how my business started. And we are open to our ancestors and our angels and the divine beloved. And what I love about when you were like, it always starts, it's totally the hero's journey with, it doesn't look like it's going to work out playing to win. And it's like, right, we have to transcend the ego. We have to transcend our thinking brain and its limitations to get there, which is why it's so different than, playing not to lose. And I will use personal example, you guys, it's what I love to do, but I had a down revenue year in 2023 and there's more than one reason, but if I were going to summarize it, it would have a lot to do with, I'd made 750 the year before and about 500 the year before that and 200 the year before that in 2020. And I was protecting. I mean, just ego. And if anyone's like, is she arrogant? Yes, I'm working on it. But also it was just ego. It was just, okay, this is my year. I'm going to make $1 million. It was push energy. And not to demonize myself. I am a human. I'm going to learn in real time for the rest of my business and life. But in hindsight, easy to look backwards. I'm like, yeah, I was like, I'm going to make this happen as if it were just me, as if I am not guided and supported by the divine and my ancestors and my angels. And so it's like, oh, of course I had a down revenue year. I wasn't actually as open or as in flow. That being said, you guys, I made $450,000. So great news. As you grow, you can take steps backwards and it's not the end of the world. But I love the idea that we make our own luck. And I genuinely believe it's what happens when our heart and our soul opens. And just speaking from my own hard-headed reality, I filed a bankruptcy in 2008, you guys, over about $40,000. I didn't know better. I choked on the shame forever. My brother died when I was 40 years old in 2018. He was 47. I got pushed out of my job 2 weeks before he died. I had been living paycheck to paycheck. My car, I owed more on my car at that time than I had. Like if I sold it, I would still owe the bank money. So I couldn't like sell my car or get a loan on my car. I didn't have a W-2. They literally pushed me out. When you file bankruptcy, you lose your 401k, as it should be. Point being, I cashed in my new 401k that was like 4K. I didn't know where I was going to be in a month. My lease was also up in my apartment. And for me, that's what it took to truly and deeply surrender and be like, hello, God, I'm listening. If that makes sense. Like suddenly I was like, okay, doing it all on my own it's not where I want to be. And I knew I wanted to be of greater service in the world. And just so anyone knows, we're all of great service. If no one ever knows your name, if you do this, then you're worthy. Like everything is perfect exactly always. I knew there was something, and I had tried hard-headed on my own to get there 10,000 different ways. And so it was like, God, if you'll show me the next step, I'll take it. And I also want to say humbled in that I was, I borrowed money. You guys, I was 40 and I had a Craigslist conversation with a roommate. And so I was about to move in with a 23-year-old dude as a 40-year-old woman, but I could afford it. And I knew he was safe. Like when we met for coffee, I was like, he will not harm me or my cats. And I remember thinking people I used to work with are going to be making fun of me. And I also remember thinking, and that's not my business. Like whatever it takes for me to be safe and to start my next chapter is all that matters, not how it looks to other people. And I kid you not, that same effing day, I had another appointment to see a high-rise apartment on Rainy Street. And if you live in Austin, Texas, Rainy Street's a nice place to live. And I went and looked at it, and the guy, whatever it was like twice as much. And, I was like, I'd love to, but sorry, I'm being a voyeur. I can't afford it. He was like, well, what can you afford? And I told him, and he was like, wait a few hours. Let me call you back. I saw him in person. Anyways, he calls me a few hours later and he's like, why don't you just pay $1,000? And so I have a Lakeview high-rise apartment on Rainy Street because he was engaged and living with his new fiance. And so he was like, I'd rather not spend whatever it was, $2,500 a month and just lose it. You can live here. You pay the $1,000, I'll pay the rest. And he was like, I found out on LinkedIn, you used to hang out with like my best friend from business school. And he said, you're good people. So he was like, I'm happy to do this. You get it. Luck.
Yeah.
What the F? Instead of me living with a fabulous young man who was 23 to my 40 and would have been just fine, I got my own 1-bedroom with a lake view on Rainy Street for the same amount of money from somebody who was also just like, I'm happy to be helpful in this way. And at least I'm not losing the full amount every month.
And from feeling like you were worthy enough to go to an apartment that you knew that you quote unquote couldn't afford.
I mean, I had the appointment, so to be really honest, I was just like, let's not be rude. Like literally, I'd met the first guy and I was like, I'd say yes, but I have this appointment that I have to go to. So like, I'm going to show up. But you're also right, worthiness. Like I had no business, but I was like, well, someday I'm going to live in a high rise overlooking the lake. So let me just see what that looks like. You're exactly right. I did not suspect it would work out as it did. I just thought, don't be rude. And to your point, I was like, someday I'm going to live here. So let me just scout it out. Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible. So I ask every single person who comes on the podcast if there's a book or something that they've read that really just opened things up for them. So do you have anything for us? Anything that comes to mind?
50,000. I can't even, but I'm going to just defer to one of my all-time favorites. If there were one book, and y'all, there's many that I like to recommend, but if there's one book that I recommend again and again, it is The Pursuit of Happiness by Chris Gardner. He is a Black man who's made bazillions of dollars in Wall Street or whatever. And they made a movie. For those of you who are like, is that the movie with Will Smith and his son? Yes, read the book. Read the book. The movie is wonderful. Read the book. The man, talk about love disciple. From a place of love, he had a young son and he was like, I'm done being broke. And in the meantime, they were unhoused for a significant period of time. In the meantime, even how he got his job in the financial services industry, it's like insane. He'd been in jail. He shows up for the interview. Somebody thinks he's a messenger. I'm like, oh, messenger deliveries, you go in that other door. He's like, I'm actually here for an interview. And he has a moment back to luck where he's got this old white dude in financial services. And this is in the 80s, you guys. So this is a big deal. And he has this moment of like, what do I say? Like he's literally been in jail for, I think, 2 days. Not necessarily for reasons that make sense, but he just decides to tell the truth. He doesn't detail the whole story, but he starts with something like women problems, which was the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And his interviewer guy like loses his shit and is like, I'm on my 4th divorce. And totally they bond and totally ends up hiring him. And it's everything we just talked about. I'm like, he was surrendered. He was open. Women problems. Like not too much information, but let me not pretend I didn't know I was supposed to be here for an interview and I don't look great, and unlocked the universe. I can't recommend that book enough from a money mindset point of view. For anyone who's interested in better understanding what it's like to be a Black American, and for any person of color who's ever felt like, well, I don't know if I can do that. That's the book.
Absolutely. I've read it. I read it on your recommendation. So I can co-sign that. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me, especially about luck. I absolutely loved every second of that because it's kind of like a law of the universe unto itself that
Mhm.
like if you walk the path of trying to play a winning game, you will generate your own luck. And I feel like that's a very
Yes.
important message for everyone. So thank you for that. This is goodbye for the podcast people. If people want to connect with you, I know that you mentioned your website and your Instagram. Could you just give that one more time for us?
Absolutely. Best places to find me. If you go to Instagram, I am XOXO Serena Hicks. Or you can go to the website Serena Hicks. And if you're like, how do I spell Serena? It is SERENA, just like Serena Williams, but I am not her, but same spelling. SerenaHicks.com is a great way to find me. Also, if you type in holywowmoney.com, it should take you to SerenaHicks.com. So also an easy spelling, but I'd love to connect with everyone. If this was valuable to you, please comment. Tell Saint what your favorite part was. I know that we will both be happy to read it and learn. And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. Bye.